My parents, my grandparents,
My parents, my grandma and grandpa,
My mom and dad, my grandparents,
My parents, grandparents,
my parents, my grandparents,
my parents, my grandparents,
my parents,
my grandma,
My parents, my grandparents,
my last youth pastor Gary,
Laverne and Marlene Smith,
Pastor Chuck,
Mrs. Weiss,
the Mackerels, Judd and Kim,
definitely both the Gilsdorfs,
Anna Probst, my aunts and uncles and cousins,
Mr. Ferber,
Anna and Nick,
Mr. and Mrs. Cheddar,
Jackie Weiss,
Rachel and Jeremy Wissink,
Brian Farrell,
Thad Mott,
Nick Brobst,
Mr. Walter,
Steve Flagg, Mr. Long,
Pastor Jeremy,
With Jessica.
Well, especially for my parents, I remember learning that I need to do everything to God's glory. So I've always had a purpose in my life.
the Hodex. It was just really fun. They're energetic, fun people, and they always kept us involved in the story.
I remember learning from Daniel Bear. He told me that sometimes children can be our biggest ministry because we can have the biggest impact on children.
Daniel's taught me a lot about being a role model to those younger than you. In the 5th grade, Ms. Thompson,
she was such a good teacher. It was about heroes of faith. She just kept going back to Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it's impossible to please Him.
after the end of the year, after we had gone through the entire Old Testament, we played a game of Jeopardy.
Yes, we played Jeopardy in that class. I almost won. I think I almost won.
I love Jeopardy, and it was just really fun to do that.
Doug Sanquist. He comes up to me most Sundays when I see him, and he'll give me a really firm handshake. It encourages me to not only shake hands firm, but also to live life intentionally.
When my mom was in the grocery store, my dad turned around and he started talking to me about like how God died on the cross for me. Like he'd talked about it before, obviously, but it just clicked that day. Like, oh, He really did die for me.
My grandma was the one who led me to Christ.
Mrs. Seno, she interacted with us when she was our director and asking us how we were and just caring about us personally. And she got cancer while I was here the first time, and that was sad, but then seeing her like still do Girls Club, it just showed me you can still, serve God and run to God in the midst of hard times.
My grandma, seeing how much she prays. My Awana teacher, her name was Miss Darlene. Every Wednesday we would come in and she would be like, oh, how are you doing? Like, what'd you do today? Did you have a good day? Do you have any prayer requests? She helped us memorize the verses, but she was more personable than anything.
When I went to Small Groups for the first time, he said that the Lord forgives no matter what.
Before Dr. Ice moved back to Texas, he had the big moving truck across the street at his apartment complex. When I got there to help out, there were probably 30 guys from the church, and it was really neat to see friends helping another friend.
Seeing my mom like last year through chemo and radiation, just seeing her go through her everyday life, still praising God, her and my dad.
Crail, when he told me that, like how he almost lost his son.
Crail taught us about the time that his son had heart problems, and it was just really cool how everybody, even people that he didn't know, had been praying.
He's like, I didn't really understand what God was doing, but I trusted Him, and I learned like to trust God. Like that's one thing I learned from him, like to trust God even when things look, really bleak